how long were you at this classified assignment for?
Let's see, 6 years. I did a year at Navy, Newport.
Okay.
That's where I met Colin Green. We were next door neighbors.
Got it.
And so I did that from 96 till 02. Then I went back to the 160th and was XO of 1st Battalion, and then ended up commanding a couple years later.
So when September 11th goes down, you're in Newport going to War College or something?
No, I was in Budapest on an exercise when it happened. We were over there doing it was one of those, I think it was like a loose nuke kind of thing, exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was. And then, a few weeks later, I was deployed. I won't go into the detail, but I was deployed into Pakistan, and then basically, the world changed for all of us after that.
So when you started doing missions, when did you get back to the 160th then?
I got back to the 160th in June it was right around Father's Day of 02. And then, I took over as the executive officer of 1st of the 160th, which is, the biggest battalion there, and that's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up, a few months later, 2 months later, I was in Afghanistan, did two back-to-back tours, and then we invaded Iraq.
How long were your tours over there?
Back then I did 60 days, was back for 30 days, and went back for another 60 days. And then I came back because we had an alert package, so you had to you had to have that ready to go. So when I wasn't forward, I was back sitting on alert, and then I ended up in Iraq in May.
So what kind of ops were you running in Afghanistan? Were you flying as the XO?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Getting
flew.
it.
Yeah, it was fun. Now Afghanistan, that's some challenging flying right over there. That place is like, they don't call it the rooftop of the world for nothing. I was very, my fond of saying, and I still say it, if you compare Iraq to Afghanistan, the enemy in Iraq is the enemy. It's the insurgents, right? The terrain is, except for those, biblical dust storms over there. It's not very challenging terrain.
It's usually not very. It's usually predictable too.
Yeah,
it's going to be hot.
Yeah,
or in the wintertime, it's going to be cold, but it's pretty predictable. Yeah.
But Afghanistan, you're up at the highest altitudes. Everybody's running on the little birds were essentially worthless over there. If they were carrying anything. And the Chinooks ended up being the heavy lifter for us to insert ops up in, way up in the Hindu Kush. The Blackhawks couldn't even do it. So very, very challenging flying there. And in the early days, they were launching out of K2, out of Karshi-Khanabad in Uzbekistan, going north into.
So is it like when you're flying at that altitude in a helicopter? Is it like you're driving on like wet pavement where you just don't get the reactions that you would normally get?
Yeah, it depends on the altitude. The aircraft is not as responsive, but where you really pay the price is if you get, when you're doing an approach in there, you got to closely manage your power or you're going to get in trouble. If you let momentum develop on that descent into the approach, you don't have the power to go around. You're committed regardless of the enemy situation. So it's just really, you're just very, very limited on the on power and options up at altitude. So I remember flying missions up 15,000 feet. So you got to be on O2 with 47s, and their allowable load was like 8 guys in a Chinook. Usually it's plus or minus a ton in those things, right? Just keep packing them in. I've seen 100 Rangers in a Chinook before,
and you're down to 8.
8.
When you guys knew. Did you have any time to say, hey, we better go start flying, around the Rocky Mountains?
Nope.
Just figure it out.
Later we did. Later we'd start prepping. We'd go out. In fact, we lost an airplane at Mount Massive, Colorado. Guys training up to go in there. Lost 4 guys. I was a commander at the time. But in the initial days, no. Nothing. Because, it was a come-as-you-are deal. Right?
So do you know, just knowledge that like, okay, well, we're at altitude. This is going to suck.
Yeah. Well, you do the performance planning, right? So you understand what the aircraft can and more importantly can't do at those altitudes. So, but you're sort of in denial at those numbers. I never thought I'd say 8 guys in a Chinook. Plus, you had to deal with the brownout. That dust was just really, really bad. Worse in the southern parts down in Helmand and down in those areas around Kandahar. Less so up in Hindu Kush Mountains up in the north. But, it was brutal flying. Brutal.
And so when you first got over there, your first deployment, what's your op tempo like?
So I got over there the first time I was there, I think September of 2002 or August of 2002 through maybe October or maybe November. I can't remember. But we did a fair amount of missions. And then, next time I went over there, I think I was there in January. No, I left December. I remember I left December right before Christmas. 30 days to the day, I was right back in the same crappy little tent up there at Bagram, with rainwater. I mean, it was just water running through it and everything. And then from January through March, because, now we're spinning up at the latter part of that to go into Iraq, right? They got the word, we're going in. And we didn't do much. I mean, because weather was really crappy. I did a couple of missions, some pretty challenging ones, way, way up in some areas that were very tricky for aviation. In fact, I was so high in a place called Cantigua that we couldn't have any fire support. I mean, the airplanes wouldn't perform. So I just elected to stay on the X, right? We infilled, and I got the ground force commander, said, give me a couple guys to cover our blind spots, and we're just going to go to ground idle while you guys clear and get whatever you're getting, and then hop back in, and we'll – normally, you know the deal. We'd come in, we'd land, drop off, and then split. We didn't. We just stayed and, pulled the engines back because I didn't want to – it took us 2-hour turn to go get gas down the hill and come back, and I didn't want to leave them up there for that long. So we said, hey, we'll just hang out.
How long were you on the ground for?
About 45 minutes to an hour. It wasn't that bad. It was cold, though. I mean, it was freezing. It was snowing and everything else up there. It was, like I said, February or something.
How? At what point did you notice that people were just like, this is what we're doing. This is the new reality. When I talked, you were talking about, I was talking about the mindset. When you did Panama and then you did Desert Storm, and you're not quite there yet. You're not quite there yet. And then, we were talking earlier, my first deployment to Iraq, it's like, oh, we're doing another, it's like, oh yeah, we're doing another op. This is just what we're doing. It's just like becomes normal.
Yeah. I think that really, there was the op tempo, the operational tempo in Afghanistan wasn't that bad. Just because of the terrain and the planning, and we didn't have all the ISR back then. We didn't have all the tools to give us good situational awareness on targets like we ended up having in Iraq. Where I saw that we really became just sort of another day at the office was in Iraq. So I went over in May, and I'll never forget my boss.
This is May of 03?
May of 03.
Got it.
So my boss, they had punched up there around March or so, I think.
Yeah.
They did that went into Baghdad International Airport. I came in and the XO is sort of he's the guy in charge of all the staff and, logistics and all that kind of stuff. And my boss said, hey, come over here. We're going to be out of here in 30 days. I just want you to make sure we got property accountability and you get all your stuff and get out. And I was like, I hadn't been to Iraq, so I'm like, sign me up, Chief. I'm in, Yeah, so I showed up there, and well, of course, 30 days never happened. But, man, the best time. We did some ops that were just incredible. The op tempo was really, really high. We were banging targets. We did an op. It's been in several magazines. Op Reindeer. It was a bunch of foreign fighters had gathered. They were getting ready to split up and attack coalition bases with teams of 3. And we got the intel on them and went in with a half gaff kind of thing, helicopter assault force for the audience and ground assault force on each side of this wadi. And it was game on. It went on. We fought for about 2 hours, killed about 100 of them. A young ranger took an RPG below the knee, We casevaced him. I'm still in touch with him. Matt Waters, he's up in Tacoma as a cop right now.
Freaking outstanding.
Yeah, he is. He's stud. I mean, Second Ranger Battalion, B Code 275 was the unit. I mean, I was a mission of a lifetime. I was Air Mission Commander riding in the jump seat of a 47 tracer. We were coming in underneath the tracer fire. I mean, it was awesome. In fact, the tracer fire was coming out my left side. And of course, your chest plate's meant to protect your chest. I was loosening up my side strap and slid it around this way. I was like, I'm going to get clipped. It's going to be over here, But just a great mission. AH-6s just crushing them, and it was a fight went on for a couple hours. Did a lot of engagements, shooting M4s out of the side of because the Rangers were so close to the enemy that we didn't want to use miniguns because of the ricochets. So we just hover in there, and the AH-6 guys would take them out with M4s and PEC-2s and all that. So it was remains the best mission I ever did. It was awesome.
And so this is in
that was June 11th, 2003.
Got it.
Yeah.
And this is now we're getting into legit op tempo. This is what we're doing. Reload, get jocked up again. We're going out tomorrow. Here's the next target.
It went from that till, you flash forward now a couple years later, right prior to the surge, and we'd be running 7-8 ops a night. I mean, I'd have those big screen TVs and ISR tracking multiple ops out of Balad. And, I mean, it was just nonstop.
So you went for 30 days. How long did you end up staying for?
Well, he said it was going to be 30 days, so I left in August. So I was there about 90 or so, and then I came back, was back for 2 months, and then I went over there for Christmas and spent, another 60. And then I a lot of guys can tell you how many times they're over there. I have no idea. I just lost track. I mean, I was just, it was back and forth.
And at what point did you go? Were you XO the whole time, or did you eventually fleet up? And
no, so the Army does it a little different, and so I was XO from 2002 till 2004, and then to command first of the 160th, it's a special board called the Special Mission Unit Board that meets, and you have to have commanded another 05 level command before that. So I got selected and went over to Germany and commanded for 2 years over in Germany, which was, a great, I wouldn't call it a breather, command's command, but I didn't deploy. And so the family and I, drank a bunch of Heffies and ate a bunch of chocolate and, looked like a couple of sausage. My wife's like, man, this camera makes us look fat. Oh, yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah.